was very painful. I'd spent years being on my own. And I actually then broke the pattern by setting an intention to be engaged by my 42nd birthday. I was 41.
Wow.
Archer, like, let's just go for it. That's a crazy. This feeds a further explanation into the pattern of married men being quite a temptation for me. And I did get involved with several of them over the years.
Interesting.
I was working with this wonderful woman. She said she had just been to her psychic that afternoon, and he said, sorry to tell you, but there's no love in your future.
Welcome back to Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. Oh my gosh, guys, today's show is amazing. We are calling in the one, and spoiler alert, the one is you. So whether you're single and looking and want to bring love into your life, or you're in a relationship and you want your relationship to be better, this show is for you. It is so jam-packed with so many actionable, practical takeaways. Oh my gosh. And it's like pure, legit inspiration for experiencing and creating, really co-creating the love you've always wanted. And finally, for those of you with attachment style issues, yes, you know who you are. Your attachment style is not fixed. Guess what? Good news. It is a habit, and we are here to help you break that habit. Let's get into it. I am so excited to introduce my guest. Katherine Woodward Thomas. Oh my God, she's here on Getting Open. I'm so excited. She is the New York Times best-selling author of Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life. And she's the author of Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, which, as probably everybody knows, was made instantly famous when Gwyneth Paltrow declared that she and former husband Chris Martin were consciously uncoupling when they decided to end their marriage, and many celebrities have followed suit. Katherine is an award-winning licensed marriage and family therapist and creator of 2 Mind Valley quests. She has trained thousands of people as certified relationship coaches using her highly transformative methods, and I'm so excited to welcome her to Getting Open.
I am so excited to be here, and I'm starstruck by you.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Well, people really trust you, and you're bringing such good information to people. So I'm just really delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's such a gift to be able to host the show and have amazing guests like you that are so knowledgeable and passionate and honestly influential. I mean, so you describe Calling in the One, which was published over 20 years ago as the first book of its kind, marrying psychologically sound metaphysical principles and leading edge transformational technologies with the law of attraction to create a holistic, systematic approach that will melt away old painful patterns and make you magnetic to your soulmate. And you are the progenitor of conscious uncoupling. I mean, you're a major OG. You're a pioneer in love and relationships and the law of attraction.
Thank you. Thank you for
and
that.
Manifestation.
Thank you. I mean, it's pretty common right now that, where our beliefs are impacting our love life, and we have to do the inner work to get aligned with the future that we're calling into our lives. But 20 years ago, it wasn't. So I seem to have this privileged ability to just kind of see where we're going. And it's a really fun thing to be able to kind of then midwife it into the lexicon, because I'm really just one among many. I mean, we're all here really inside of a hunger to evolve, a hunger to heal and to transform our lives and to actually live the lives that we feel that we're destined to live or hungry to live.
Well, totally. But you're prescient. And I just think of people like you as a channel, right? You do your own work, you're open, and it enables you to have that foresight. And then to me, critically, to communicate it in a way that really hits, right? Because you can have the information, but if you don't, I mean, not to sound too woo, but like if you don't treat it as sacred and you're not able to communicate it in a way that it can reach people like Gwyneth Paltrow, it doesn't have the kind of impact that you have had. So, I mean, honestly, congratulations and thank you for your incredible work. So let's talk about becoming the one, because that's so central to your teachings. It's something that I've embraced in my own life. But what does it mean to become the one? And how can people do that more easily and effectively?
Well, I think, at the most basic level, we all have our lists of what we're looking for in a partner or would hope for in a partner. And on the most simple level, you want to start to aspire that yourself. You don't want to put on your list that you want someone who's really physically fit and really, radically successful in life and winning at the game of life, but you're kind of a couch potato and you're, indulging your smoking addiction or whatever. You want to be your best self in order to create, call in the best person. But it actually is a lot more complicated than that. So becoming the one is actually, it's funny because at the end, people go through the calling in the one course, and at the end of it, they say, oh, I get it. Calling in the one was calling in me. Right.
Love that so much. It looks a ninja move, Katherine.
It's not just about meeting the right person. It's about the right version of yourself when you meet that person, because all relationships are kind of a spectrum of possibilities. I think a lot of us have suffered the heartache, and I include myself in that before I created this work, of meeting someone and feeling great potential in that relationship, but then kind of carting all your baggage, your insecurities, your weirdo avoidant attachment style,
Weird, totally weirdo. As common as it is. Oh, right. It's going to be so hard.
Right. Or, or your push pull, all of that stuff that actually destabilizes connection, really limits what's going to be possible in that relationship. And I think the heartache that many of us have suffered is, that might have been the one. And there was so much potential. And then it just blew up. Game over. And that's a very painful experience. So the calling in the one work is like, let's get ready here for this. Let's do our work. Let's actually clean out the past. Let's put the past in the past. Or to think about, well, who would I need to be? Who would I need to be in order to manifest the relationship I desire, and then sustain it over time, and then even actualize the higher potentials of that connection? And that's going to be a much more self-aware self. That's going to be a you that when you're triggered doesn't start just speaking from the triggered place, but maybe can speak about the triggered place. Oh, I'm 4 years old right now. Let's put a pause on the conversation. It's not going to go well from this place, because the way that I'm hearing it is through that lens of, my 4-year-old who was so, beaten up by my older brother all the time. I can't hear what you're saying outside of that. So can we just stop for a moment? So that's me speaking about the trigger, opposed to me then, creating a re-traumatizing, re-wounding experience with my partner. So that's some self-awareness. Where do I go? What's the self I drop into the moment I get disappointed or frightened or threatened? Right? Because that's
the fear. I mean, the threat could be the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, right? Like that. Like there's hardly a worse feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. The projection of that. So we get triggered, because somebody, does something that's unconscious or, unkind, but we also get triggered by our own history, by our own thoughts. So gosh, what if they don't call me back?
Right? Oh my God, no kidding. 100%, or text back fast enough. What's interesting is how many of us end up repeating those, the sort of the chaos, dysfunction, the hurt and heartache that we experienced in our childhoods. And until you really do this work, it becomes habitual, as self-undermining as it is, right? I mean, it's like we know better, intellectually we know better, but those patterns are so deeply rooted. And I always love to refer to Dr. Sue Johnson, who you probably even knew before she passed away, with her EFT, emotionally focused therapy, I think it was, how she talks so beautifully about how we grow each other in relationships. And so listening to you, it comes to mind because every relationship gives us that opportunity to notice and say, oh, here I go again. And heal that part of us, whether it's, from age 4, 8, whatever, wherever it's coming from. And as you were saying, when we call in the one, when I think about really being able to evolve together and experience just a very, I don't know, like it just feels like an opportunity to be our best selves in, kind of in that environment of a relationship. Right. So,
and I think we all go in with the best of intentions of doing that, and then as you're saying, the patterns will come up again. And it occurs like, oh my gosh, how did I marry my father? Like the worst of my, like, how did that happen? And we get frustrated. We get kind of victimized by our own psychology, right? We get victimized by what happened in the past. And, sometimes we try and forgive our parents or our caregivers or whoever it was that we felt wounded by, but we're still stuck with the pattern. And then we get just victimized by our unconsciousness and our own psychology. So I want to talk about for a moment here the mistake that we're making.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, bring it, because everyone's like, what do I do to change that? And I mean, let's face it, you go, oh, this relationship is too painful, I'm out. And then you repeat it in the next one, and you repeat it in the next one. It's a pattern that you bring with you until you identify it and heal it. So help us identify and heal it, Katherine.
People say all the time, well, we're just repeating patterns because we're trying to heal it. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I never repeated a pattern and it felt, thank God, I feel so healed. No, it's like ripping the scab off. Okay. It's a rewounding. It's like a closed loop. So I'm going to solve the mystery of this closed loop. Okay.
Thank God. Please do.
All right. So the reason why we are also entrenched in the patterns of, and particularly these painful ones that show up in relationship. And basically it does come down to Sue Johnson's basic question, are you there for me? And the answer when you're in a pattern is no, they're not there for me. And the agony of that, okay, they're not there. So,
but hang on, can I just interject for just a second? Because I think this is so critical. Maybe they're there for you, but you fuck it up because you doubt it. And it's like, well, maybe they're just having lunch, right? Or maybe they're having a bad day. So when you think about that, maybe they are, but maybe you're also self-sabotaging.
Well, that's the interpretive lens. And when you're inside of it, the interpretive lens of an old wounding,
then they're not there for you. You're instantly abandoned, even if they are there for you. Yeah, I got you.
Guess what? Then you do something that pushes them away, and they have the experience that you're not there for them, and they're not safe anymore, and they do withdraw. But you won't understand that you just sourced that. You actually created that because you're centered in an old self of I am alone and no one really is ever there for me. Okay, so solving the mystery of why it keeps happening. We are talking about the interpretive lens, how we interpret life, how we respond to life. So if we are continually going backwards, like first of all, I need to say this up front. It's very important to get that we desperately need to do our healing work. We need to connect the dots. We need to understand why we are the way that we are. We need to face the losses of our past that were never spoken about or validated. We need to learn how to be tender with ourselves and notice that we speak to ourselves. We have a tendency to speak to ourselves in the toxic ways we were spoken to. So all of that stuff is very important to do. However, that healing work can, while it can save your life, it won't necessarily change your life. Okay, so
will you tell me that there is something that will? Fingers crossed.
So this is where calling in the one begins, is by setting an intention that looks impossible given your history. You claim a positive possible future. And instead of continually analyzing why you are the way that you are, or what the F is wrong with you that you did this again, or, it's in my astrological chart, I can never win in love, all of those conversations that we get stuck on, trying to explain ad nauseum why no one ever shows up for me in the way I need them. What we're doing essentially when we do that is we are in danger of solidifying the self of that story. What we focus on grows. So if we're focusing constantly on the abandoned 2-year-old, on the abused 5-year-old, and that is, that deserves our attention. But at some point, we actually need to begin an inquiry. Who will I need to be in order to manifest that miracle? Right? In order to actually have happiness and love, in order to become someone who is the source of safety in love for myself and for another. Who would I need to be? That's a developmental journey. And what happens when we have these wounds in the past is that the development that we would have organically engaged at the age of 2, at the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all of that got stunted. So there's literally things we don't know how to do. So for example, if you have an I'm alone story because you suffered neglect as a child, that might be a developmental trauma, chronic neglect. Then there's a belief about other people that they're not there for you or that they leave. So the underdeveloped capacity is conflict resolution. You don't know how to resolve conflict. Now, Gottman's came out with a study, years ago that said the way that longevity happens between couples, the way that people bond is through conflict. If you don't know how to engage conflict other than just putting up a wall and I'm out of here, then you're not bonding at the level that would make it very difficult for someone to leave you. And in the absence of that bond, people do leave.
Right.
Number one.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not safe either then at that point, right?
Well, you're not even there. There's no there. You're just like,
even worse, you're not even there. Forget being safe.
You're afraid to tell the truth.
Yeah.
You're
Oh.
to be a bit of a troublemaker. Like, oh, that doesn't feel good to me. Let's talk about this. I don't like that decision you just made. I have a different idea about that. Can we have a conversation? If you're afraid to say that, then that means you're chronically self-abandoning. You're dismissing your own discomfort. Try and stay bonded with that person. And it creates a certain superficiality in the connection. So this is how we're the source of our experience. Right. So the answer is, the short answer is, claim a positive possible future, claim a miracle for yourself. Shall be so, put it in time, because it makes it urgent. Like, oh, I actually, if I'm gonna run a marathon someday, I can just like eat my chips on the couch while I'm watching, reruns of The Sopranos. So, but if I'm gonna actually run a marathon in 3 months, I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to put on sneakers. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to start to, train for that right now.
So let me break this down. And that was so beautiful. I could just listen to you for days. And it hits home for me personally, not going to lie. And I know it does for so many people. So when it comes to setting that intention, that miraculous intention, and I love that you've given that permission, because so often it's like, oh, I can't ask for a miracle. It's like, well, why not? aim high, live large. So you set that intention of having this miraculous, really positive outcome for yourself. And so and you say there needs to be a sense of urgency. So practically, are you saying that somebody should do that 3 months, 6 months, not 3 years? So what's the ideal time according to you, or time range?
Whatever's going to light a firecracker under your tushy. Okay, a little bit like, oh, I better get rid of that guy that's hanging around that I know is really toxic for me. And every morning after I feel sick to my stomach, I feel bad about myself when I go smoke. So, like that, like there's no more time for that. So the game is not, and the game isn't even to have that person by that date, because, we're talking true love. It's like if
well, that's what I was going to ask you. If what you're saying is it, when you're saying calling in the one, by the way, I just did the Mind Valley manifestation summit over the weekend. It was outstanding. It was so good. And, what Vishen and others talk about, it's like, you're the one you're waiting for. Right? So when I think to your point about like calling in the one, you're
really, because, and I'm going to say not really. And of course, it's always a yes and, the context that Vishen was saying that in is a yes and. But we are relational creatures. And I think that sometimes when we're single and we're looking and it's not working, it's frustrating to hear things like, you are the one you're waiting for, or you have self before you can love someone else. It's kind of like, guys, like, time is ticking here. And I've been doing this for a lot of years. And don't I love myself enough yet to be able to have someone in my life? So I think just in terms of valuing relationship and valuing connection, it is a very extraordinary experience to have another person in your life who is deeply, deeply trustworthy, devoted, related to you, witnessing your life, making sacrifices for your success in life that are noble and kind. That's extraordinary. That's not something you can replace. And our relationship with ourselves will always determine whether or not that's possible. Okay, so when we're talking about self-love, all the self-care stuff is great. And I think we're all working very, very hard because life is really pushing on all of us right now. Life is not easy right now. We are going through a collectively very difficult period. And you hear the message everywhere: self-care, 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 self-care. Okay, so that is really critical. That is not self-love. Okay, that's self-care. That's honoring your physical self, honoring your physical needs, honoring your emotional needs. But that is a form of love. What we're talking about is when you see that you have that 2-year-old who is neglected, and she is the one who's kind of driving the car of your love, which is, and by the way, I think dating these days can be quite brutal. So just the dating, getting online or whatever people are doing to try and find somebody to connect.
Well, everybody's nervous system is shot these days. So it's like my nervous system shot, yours isn't, but all these people are just showing up stressed. And to your point, then it's back to how frequent and common attachment issues are. So it's like you have, that underlying thing from decades ago. And now you have a society where collectively there is just a lot of freaking stress, anxiety, disconnection, overwrought nervous systems. So no wonder it's extra brutal out there to be using the apps and to be dating.
Right. So what we're talking about, though, is, so all of that self-care is very necessary, but the most important transformation you could make is the transformation of identity. So I'm calling in the one we call like the I'm alone story. And there's 22 of them, by the way. There's 22 core conversations we collapse into: the I'm not good enough, or the I'm not safe. Each one of us has our own variation of a theme, but there's actually, you can pattern them out.
So are those, would you describe those, because this is so important. You just said, I want to make sure I got it right. Like the most important thing you can do is what did you say?
Identity.
It's in your identity.
It's to recognize when you're overly identified with the younger wounded self, the traumatized self.
And I feel like the common phrase for that is believing limited beliefs. I mean, would you say those 22?
Well, it's beliefs at the level of identity.
Okay.
So a belief might be, the rug is always pulled out from under your feet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's a more general category.
Okay, versus the identity. So let's go into the identity. Maybe you can give some examples of the 22 identities that people are basically unconsciously holding onto or identifying with, I guess.
Well, if I'm reaching out online to 12 people and nobody writes me back, I'm going to make meaning of that. Right? That's a disappointment. That's a big disappointment. It's frustrating. And I'm going to make meaning of that, which goes something like, maybe I'm not good enough. And that goes all the way back to, that's a theme in my life in this area. Like I'm successful professionally, or I've got a lot going on. Money is easy for me. Friends are easy for me. But in this area, I'm struggling. And it always comes back to somehow I am just not the one that people choose. It must be because I'm not good enough. So that's what I'm talking about, the meaning-making frames at the level of identity. I'm not good enough, and it has a relational component. Other women are better than me, or, I'm inferior to others. There's a relational meaning. And inside of that, if you actually can take a breath when you're in that space and ask yourself, sweetheart, how old are you right now? You will inevitably feel, wow, this is a younger part of me. This is not my adult center. So what we need to do, the skill that we need to learn, and this is in the third week of the Calling in the One process, is this shifting of identities, but at a somatic level. It's not just, I'm going to do, have an idea over it. Like, well, I am too good enough. I know I'm good enough, and, this is why I'm good enough. That's my mind now, that I left the somatic self behind. So all of the beautiful work that Kristin Neff has done on self-compassion, I don't know if you've ever had her on, you should be a great person.
Kristin Neff?
Neff, N-E-F-F.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, great.
It's all about self-love and self-compassion. So to be able to, just speak to yourself in the third person, right? Because studies are now coming out that show when you speak to yourself in the third person, like I say to myself, Katherine, sweetheart, honey, wait a minute, right? I feel regulating myself. Okay. And I'm also differentiating the part of me that has resources, that think clearly, that's developed, that's been in therapy for years, that's been listening to Andrea now for a few months. Got a lot going on with her.
Thank you.
I'm just, the part of me that knows things, and to not skip over that self in the body, but to actually go back and say, sweetheart, you are more than enough for me. I love you just as you are. You need to do nothing to prove your value. And by the way, you are worthy of love just as you are. There's always things to improve. There's always growth that we're going to be engaging, but just as you are more than worthy of the love that you seek. And then that becomes what I call a power statement, which is I am worthy of the love I am looking for. Even when someone else doesn't recognize me, I am still worthy of that love. I am more than enough. Just as I am, I need do nothing to try and prove my value. That's the you that you want to be dating from.
Well, totally. And what comes to mind is for that person who sends the 12 messages, doesn't get anything back, and then the loop kicks in. And what I honestly feel in my heart and listening to you is it just feels energetic. It's almost like energetically, I'm expecting nobody to reach me back. And so I'm kind of showing up in that place of lack, if you will, versus what you described. And you got to feel it. It's like you can't fake it, right? And so when I think about that, Kristin Neff, her work in the deep self-compassion, when you talk about somatic exercises, I'm a huge fan of the hearts. Meditation is great. Heart-centered meditation. I think I had Deborah Rosman on the show. I don't know if you know Deborah from Heart Math Institute. she talks about heart-centered meditation. It's like meditation on steroids. And so that, just it feels like when listening to you as you're talking about really believing that hey, Andrea, you're worthy of love, darling, right? Like you feel it. And I feel like energetically you're communicating that in a very different way. Do you think that's accurate?
It is accurate, but I'll tell you something that brings it it makes it more accessible, because even though it's a little bit vague in that moment, just to shift energetically, because, the truth is sometimes we can't shift energetically. Okay. I mean, it takes a while. You might have to work something through. When we're centered in a story, and when I say centered, and I mean we're somatically identified with that story. Beliefs are not in the brain. Beliefs are actually in the body. They're like a cluster of emotion. I don't know if anyone knows that, the reference of that Pigpen character in Charlie Brown.
Oh, no. Yeah, bring it. Oh, yeah. He's like carrying it's always like with him. Yeah. It's like a whole ecosystem.
Right. So every time he'd walk around, he'd bring his field of dust around him. That's what we're like when we're in a false center. We're overly identified with a false love identity. You can see it in people. And we know it. We recognize it. Like if somebody walked in the room at a party, you would know if that person lives in a friendly world or an unfriendly world. They're all going to walk in like, I'm not safe, and who are these people? And they're defended, they're a little closed off. That's an I'm not safe story, walking into a room full of strangers, versus somebody who's just like, great, new people, new friends. Hey, everyone.
Right. Well, I always like to remind people that 70% of our communication is nonverbal. Right. So we're getting that. I mean, and I would say it's a combination of, for people who are just listening and not watching, Katherine had her arms folded as, kind of, it's just looking a little not very approachable at the party versus, to me, body language is a combination of, you tell me if this is right or not, how I'm moving my body. Are my arms open? Am I looking? Am I making eye contact with you? Am I smiling? But it also feels like it's energetic.
It is energetic.
There's a vibe.
However, so let me break this down into a way that's very accessible. Well, okay, so let's go back to the I'm alone. When I'm centered in the story that I'm alone and no one's there for me, I'm just going to be self-sufficient to the extreme.
Get out of my head, Katherine. Yep, that's how that works.
People look at me, they think, oh, she has got it so together. She doesn't need me for anything.
No, we don't. It's so much safer and easier that way. Better, more control, all the good things.
Yeah. So if you're really going to work yourself up to, I'm connected to everyone and everything. And the way that life seems to have designed us is to be interdependent, and it's safe to need people. It's actually good to need people. There's a difference between unhealthy needs, that neediness, and healthy needs. We want to claim our healthy needs. And then the new way of relating is to be vulnerable and to learn how to show up in a way where people can find their way into your world. That's a new skill. To show up.
It's a scary skill.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like homeopathy, right? You give a little, or even like in the, vaccination science, it's like you give that just that little tiny amount and inoculates you. In this case, you give that, it's like you open up to that thing that's scary so that you can overcome the fear. Is there a hack or a tip or two when it comes to somebody actually doing that? So, people listening who are like, oh, it's like just so hard to open up. It's so hard to be scary. It's so hard to be vulnerable. Do you have a tip or something that's just like, okay, this is a go-to when you're feeling resistant?
I think people who are not used to being vulnerable feel like vulnerability they just feel so exposed. So it's not, so I like to tell people, this isn't about you, sharing your deepest, darkest secret. It might just be like, I was actually really looking forward to seeing you, and I wore my best shirt. Do you like it? I tried to really get dressed up for you. I mean, just being a person, being, and you talk about being open a lot, keeping it real. So it's just actually in the moment to show up in your truth and in your humanity, in your vulnerability. Okay, that I like you, that kind of thing. Now, if you get a cold shoulder to that, that's really important information because this is not then somebody who might, be a good person to overly invest in. So you have to be more committed to the future you're causing than to getting what you want in this moment, which is, I hope this guy likes me. This woman likes me, right? So your fidelity is to becoming who you need to be in order for that love that you're standing for to both manifest and sustain itself, and then to be able to navigate that relationship to its highest potentials. So what's the hack to vulnerability? Just put down your guard a bit into the truth in the moment. I don't really like that kind of food. I want to go to Italian to mind vegan to a vegan place down the corner. Be a little bit of a pain in the ass. But did I say that?
Oh, that's good. I mean, in a lot of cases, I think for a lot of people who, especially have people-pleasing tendencies and so forth, conflict avoidant and all that, I mean, to be, a little bit of a lot of a pain in the ass. I mean, what I love about these conversations with people like you is when somebody like you can give permission to those who haven't figured it out yet. That I'll tell you a fun little story. It was probably 20 years ago, and Ariana Huffington, I was at an event and she was speaking, and she just talked about how when she's really stressed, she sleeps. Now, meanwhile, I'm a recovering workaholic. It's like go, go, go. And sleep was not high on my, priorities, and just because it's not. And so I took her permission, particularly when I'm stressed, to sleep. I'm like, thank you. Ariana says it's okay, so I can do it. And I mean, it's silly, but that, it's like back to your point about we are all relational. And so to have somebody you trust and respect give you that gem and go, hey, for Katherine, for you to say, be a little bit of a pain in the ass, maybe be a little bit more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody listening and watching, you got permission to be a little pain in the ass for yourself, for your greater good.
This is how we weed out people who are selfish. That they're too selfish for love. We all have to say, oh, you're dating the narcissist and narcissist. The way you weed that out at the beginning is you actually tell the truth, because the way of relating that gets you into that situation is trying to be the perfect person who doesn't really need much tending to. You're very self-sufficient. You're going to be a target for people who are narcissistic.
Yeah. And then it's like, then you've created that loop for yourself, and then you're mad. Right. And then they're not showing up for you. And it's like, what the heck's happening here? So yeah, I mean, it's almost like the only real rational answer is to show up and be yourself as best you can. And ideally, as time goes on, to continue to peel away that onion, take a little more risk, right? Be a little bit more vulnerable. And if that person is not receptive, then they're not your guy.
Yeah. So this is, so what we're talking about is when you say peeling away at the onion, this is not a slow and steady process. This is actually you're shot out of a cannon process.
Okay.
The story about how Colleague of the One got created.
Yeah, please.
Which I'm no longer married to my husband, or just to disqualify everybody who loves.
What, you called him a husband?
My husband now.
I've never heard that phrase. Okay, if everybody else hasn't heard it, you heard it first here on Getting Open. A husband. That is awesome. Oh my God. Okay.
But I was married to him for 10 years. He's still my dear, dear friend. We have a daughter. We do things together. Three of us just had lunch the other day. So he is a gem in my life. But but I had a pattern of unavailable people that was extremely painful, and kind of any size, shape, form. I mean, it was just uncanny. particular unfortunate pattern with people who were married who would always go after me. And it just seemed like nobody who was available would show up for me. So it was very painful. I'd spend years being on my own. And, people, and I hated that question. Why are you still single? Like, what am I supposed to say to that? I don't know.
Hang on. Is this before or after?
Oh, this is led up to.
Okay. Right.
This is pre-calling. So we're going back 30, 40 years.
Amazing. Okay, great.
So that was the pattern I had. And I actually then broke the pattern by setting an intention to be engaged by my 42nd birthday. I was 41, and I think that was 8 months down the line. So that was complete departure. Like, let's just go for it. That's a crazy.
Wow.
I mean, I had two marriage proposals, one when I was 17, one when I was 19, but here I am 41. So that was, quite a while. And I didn't know, again, you can't make true love happen like you can. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. It's not like do that. You can map that out. You can get a graduate degree and pretty much say you're going to do that. So you're kind of invoking the magic of life. What you're invoking is your powers of co-creativity. And I think that most of us are asleep. We're very passive about the future. We think that the future is kind of fixed. We look at our chart or we ask our psychics, what's going to happen. So you have everything to do. We have everything to do with what happens and how we can influence and impact what will happen. Start with a positive, possible future. Because the moment you claim that future, you are now in a co-creative process of life. How am I going to manifest that miracle? The key to manifesting miracles is to recognize that we are the miracle workers. Miracles don't happen to us, they happen through us. Even if you're like a traditional, Bible studying Christian in the New Testament, it always started with you have to believe. When you believe, then the miracle will happen. What does that mean? It means that we're setting our course internally. That's the future I'm committed to creating. And by the way, the self of the past, that traumatized self of the past that's been getting re-wounded, that you've been overcompensating for that wounding or that fear that you have about yourself and analyzing it ad nauseum, that's an insufficient self to get.
Right. Yeah. That coming from lack and then, kind of just staying in that pattern.
Well, okay. You're showing up, you're interpreting through that lens, and then you're showing up in ways that are going to actually create more relational evidence for that. If you have an I'm not safe, and so you're pulling back a lot very quickly, you're kind of trigger happy, you're skittish, you're creating a lack of safety for the other person, you're destabilizing them, you're destabilizing the relationship, and then they show up erratically and you say, see, men are not safe.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like the self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
It's the self, but it's happening in very particular ways through us. So when you claim a positive possible future, I claimed that future for myself. I had no idea how to make that happen. So I would sit on my meditation cushion every day and I did a visioning practice. What does it feel like? This is the manifestation thing that Vision Lucky is talking about seminar. I'm going to sit on the meditation cushion. I'm going to collapse time. I'm going to put myself into that situation like I already have this person in my life. And I'm going to use my imagination to, what does it sound like when they're talking on the phone in the next room? What does it smell like when they're cooking dinner for me in the kitchen? What does it taste like when they're, when we're toasting one another on our first anniversary? Putting it into your body, you're playing with the images, and who am I here? You even can imagine what it feels like when that person is loving you. So I am someone who is loved. I am valued. I am respected. I am supported. I am a we. That's a new identity.
Mm-hmm.
So do that every morning, and then I'd ask the universe.
Hang on, how long would you do that for?
It could be for 5 minutes.
Okay. So it doesn't have to, you're not sitting there for an hour. You can just to be so intentional.
I mean, some people do. If you have the time to do it, great. but normally meditation, those of us who are faithful to it will leave 20 minutes for a meditation, daily practice. But you can do this in 5 or 7 minutes. Then you want to ask the universe 3 questions. And everybody, get your pens out. But the first question is, what will I need to give up?
What will I need to give up? All right, I'm going to get my pens out too.
For this future to come to me. Okay, and then you're listening deeply to your own intuitive knowing. On some level, we all know what we have to let go of. What will I need to give up? And what you're looking for really is just one thing. I mean, there was, and sometimes it's like, you give up that, lifelong held resentment towards your father. Give up your story about what happened to you in your youth. It could be big like that. It could also be, when I first was doing this myself, I mean, I did the process and then I wrote a book about it because it worked. I was really just trying to find my way like all of us. I noticed that in my home, I had all these images on my walls of noble looking women, single women staring off into space.
Interesting. Oh my gosh. So interesting. Did you get rid of all your art or did you put it somewhere else?
Put it in the closet. It's just
interesting. Right. Because that was almost, wow. That's pretty meta.
And then the second question is, what will I need to embrace in order to prepare myself now? Either embrace or how might I need to grow today? Like, what am I needing to learn how to do? Well, that might be, engaging conflict in a healthy way. Okay, we all have our areas. Now, a lot of times where we get to with our areas of deficits, we explain why we are the way we are to ourselves. We talk about that ad nauseum to our therapist. And then when we're in a relationship, we just explain it to the other person. Well, I'm just this way, which is, of course, is a real ceiling on the potential of that connection. It's going to depress the other person because now they know they can't really count on you in that area. So it kind of dumbs the relationship down. If you notice that you are a certain way, I get very defensive or I'm afraid, I people please automatically, as a safety strategy, or I give to try and ingratiate somebody to me, or I give myself away to people too easily. It's not just about understanding that you're like that or why you're like that. It's about inquiring, like, how would I need to grow to not be that way any longer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because to me, when I hear that, the word that comes to mind is integrity. And I feel like I've really had to hold the mirror up to my own face and say, Andrea, are you integrity when you're people pleasing or whatever the thing is that is a coping mechanism from when I was really little? And I'm just trying to get by over here. But when you really start to wake up and you see those behaviors, that it's like, well, that's not an integrity to myself. And so using that word integrity, if when I found myself slipping, it's like, not an integrity, right? And it just, that's been kind of a hook for me to go, what do I need to change over here?
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. So it's this question that says, okay, like, what is there for me to grow in order to be who I will need to be when that miracle is fulfilled? Okay, and you listen again to your own intuition. And sometimes it's going to be a big thing, and sometimes it's going to be, very immediate. So sometimes it's going to be developmental, where I need to have much better boundaries around my sexuality.
Katherine, let me ask you this. How do you, for people listening and who are like, okay, and you're going to give us a third step in a moment, but just even with these two, I always say I'm a type AAA Aries. I could see me coming up with a list of like 17 things for each of them, and that becomes overwhelming. Would you recommend just saying, I'm just going to commit to one thing at a time, or what do you recommend?
On that day, because this is your daily practice. You are weaving magic into the world.
Okay, so this is every day. So today I'm not going to people please. Tomorrow I'm going to be not defensive.
Thank you. So you're like, okay, what is there for me to focus on
today? Love that. Love it. Actionable today.
Yeah. What is
the
important thing for me to focus on growing today. And then the next question, what is my next step? Okay, and that's the action question. Because some of us, we know these things, we overthink them, or we talk ourselves out of them. No, you get off the cushion, you pick up the phone, you send that email, you do whatever you can to begin to move the universe forward to find your way to that future. You are a co-creator of that future. And what happens is transformation begins to happen. So when I said the healing, the past is critical to do, and it will save your life. But what will change your life is when you have this future that is pulling you forward to become who you need to be in order to go on it.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, so we're going to do a quick recap. Every day, you're going to ask yourself these 3 questions. What will I need to give up? 1. 2, what will I need to embrace, or how do I need to change? And then 3, what is my next step? No overthinking, take action. And well, what's so beautiful about that is, I mean, I can feel it, honestly, is just how much agency you're giving to yourself, right? And if you do that a few days and then a few weeks and then in a few months, it's like, whoa, that, and with that guiding initial principle that you described, that you have set that really clear intention about that amazing future possible you in partnership. And I love the word co-creating, right? Because I do feel like that also gives agency to you. It's not just, oh, I'm just waiting. It's like, no, I'm co-creating. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah. Well, we kind of know this in the realm of if you want to start a business, you don't just like set an intention and stick it on your vision board.
Yeah. No, you got to do the work.
I have to grow into my power. I have to learn new skills. I have to become who I need to be to really run a successful 7-figure business. It's this process of becoming. I want to talk a little bit about the passivity that most of us have when it comes to really standing for a bold and beautiful future. And by the way, the tendency, if that's new for people, is to do it, to do little tiny baby steps in order to, like, if I've always had very unhealthy, toxic kind of dynamics, maybe I've dated people who are, addicted to alcohol or, got some kind of, really big dysfunction, and I end up being kind of their mother or their caregiver. So maybe that's my pattern. So the tendency for someone like that, it's a big jump to say, I'm going to create real deep happiness and health and longevity in love by next Christmas, right? That's a big leap. Take that leap. Do not say, I'm going to start dating nicer people. Why is that? There's no call to really pull yourself beyond who you've known yourself to be in that small in order to intention. Well, I'm going to love myself more, because if I love myself more, than maybe one day, you really have to set an intention for what you actually want.
That bold intention, which I think can be, golly, it feels like it can be scary to do that. And I think people can rationalize why they wouldn't want to do it, because then they wouldn't want to be disappointed if they miss it. So what do you say to those people who are like, no, I don't want to, I've had enough disappointment. What do I do, Katherine?
I already have a PhD in disappointment.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
It'll just be one amongst many, so this is what I want to tell. The story I want to tell is of this. When I didn't even finish my manifest.
I'm paying attention. I'm going to get you back on track. I'm like, we need to go full circle here. So you give the little story, and then I'll bring you back to your story.
The story is I was working with this wonderful woman who early on in the days of calling in the One, and before the course, this is when I was in LA. I had my own healing center, and we used to circle up, and maybe we'd have 30, 40 people come in to do calling in the One together every week, and we'd meet. It was before the online learning exploded. And she came in, and she was pretty despondent. As we were going around the circle, just introducing ourselves, she said she had just been to her psychic that afternoon. And he said, sorry to tell you, but there's no love in your future.
Oh my God, fire that psychic is what I say.
This is her long-term psychic. He was her
Oh, dang. God, that's tough.
and she must have told him she was going to calling in the One. And so he said, I'm going to give you some bad news. You need to accept this. I don't see any love in your future. So she was pretty despondent, but fortunately, she had the courage to do the process anyway. And she, in the course, participating. She went back to him about 4 weeks later to talk about some business thing. And he, laid out his little tarot cards or whatever he did. And he said, "Oh, what did you just do? You just changed your future. Let me tell you when. Let me tell you about your husband." And she was married the next year.
Shouldn't there be some like FDA guidelines about psychics, that give you that fatalistic message?
You have to recognize that the future is fluid.
Yeah, 100%.
Future is fluid, and we are influencers of the future. If you have an astrological chart that is kind of counter to love, which, many people have struggled with, then it's imperative you are intentional. But the universe will respond to you. This is my intention. This shall be so. And I will put in the work to become who I would need to be in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I have long felt, and the more I do my own work and manifestation exercises, visualizations, and so forth, we all have so much more power than we realize. We have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for. And that is the truth. And I know it. I've lived it, and you've lived it. And a lot of people have lived it. It's great to share it, but you got to do it, right? That's the point. Like, and to your point, like you start with that intention and you just, you take these steps. So let's go back to your story and how you created this book. Yes. And I also want to make sure we're getting all the steps so that everybody who is trying to call in the One, who will call in the One, there is no trying on the show today, people. You're calling in the One. You're calling in the One. Catherine's going to show you how.
If you take the invitation. Okay, so step one, starting with this positive possible future and just claiming it as your own. There is now the recognition inside of doing that you are the source of your experience. You've got to give up victimization. You really have to give up being like, can I tell my sad story to yet another person about how this was done to me? And when I talk about giving up victimization, can I just say, if you feel victimized and burdened with that, you were treated poorly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You were. I'm not in any way invalidating the suffering. It's very important that people feel that. This is about taking your power, about who will you be in the face of that. And and are you going to now allow that trauma to dictate and determine what's possible or not possible for you moving forward? And the answer is no, I will not.
Yeah.
So we have to look at how the pattern is staying alive through us now in present time. That's the way of relating. When I'm self-sufficient to the extreme, nobody can find their way into my world. When nobody feels like I need anything from them. And so they're not finding a place that they're valuable with me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and to your point about, you've been referring to the Gottman's work and where intimacy flourishes, you described it through conflict and we're talking about vulnerability. It's like, that's what we all need. Right. And that idea of seeing somebody else and really being seen. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Right.
And in the absence of that, you're really fucking lonely. Excuse my language, but it's like, and then you wonder why you feel lonely and mad.
And you feel kind of victimized because I'm such a great person. If anybody deserves love, it's me. Because the thing about the I'm alone also is you tend to be real givers. Leaders. That's also very common with leaders.
Okay, so hang on. So we've got one positive possible future, claiming it. And then are you saying, how did you describe two? You said give up the victimhood?
No, I was just saying that was now a requirement for the whole. So that's just an overall framework. And it does lead into two, which is complete your past.
Complete your past. Okay.
Your past. So there's things that we focus on in week 2, which have to do with really tracing almost your resentments, because if we only resent people to the extent that we've given our power away to them, so we're our power. Also, old agreements is a really big one. If you made agreements with a past lover, I'll never love anyone like I love you. If you gave a marital vow, if you promised yourself you're never going to get hurt like that again,
Mm-hmm.
if you made a deal with your parents that you're never going to bring home anyone that they don't like, but
Katherine, it sounds like what you're saying is give yourself permission to change your mind.
yes,
I love
yes,
it.
have
And
to.
that's a power move. When I think of politicians, not in a bad way. It's like, oh, I'm not going to raise taxes. I decided to change, whatever. But I think of like business leaders and just normal people, rather than being so attached to, I made that decision, and even in the absence of all this new information, I'm still going to stay stubbornly fixated on that decision I made. It is the hobgoblins of small minds, right? It's like, don't do that. Give yourself permission to change your mind. Okay, I love it.
So step 3 is what we're talking about a lot today, which is this transformation of identity. And it's really about claiming the truth of your value and your worthiness and your power to create love. And it's about beginning to show up everywhere with everyone in your life from that center now. Okay, from that center. It's not just waiting until you meet that person and somehow they're going to fortify you and you'll feel more confident and then you can show up as yourself fully. It's you really have to start showing up more authentically in the truth of who you are. That's the loving
Well,
you.
let me just chime in on that, because again, when I think about even the work that I've done, it is such a beautiful validation and affirmation or reaffirmation when you show up in a calmer, more relaxed, more confident, loving, generous, blah, 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 joyful way. It's like being mirrored with me, mirrored back everywhere. And then that ends up creating my team always jokes, I always talk about the flywheel or the virtuous cycle. And it's like that creates a virtuous cycle, right? Because I'm showing up. I mean, how sweet were you when we first started? I'm like, oh my God, thank you. And so I love that. I just really want to emphasize that to everybody listening, that it's like in every relationship, show up as this self that is more self-compassion. And I got to say, in my own life, as somebody who's workaholic, AAA, Aries, all that stuff, becoming more relaxed has been one of the biggest power moves I've ever given myself. And it's just like, oh, life flows more easily. And I am showing up in a way that people are responding to, but it's all like, it's like I'm enjoying my life more. And so people enjoy being around me more, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Really powerful. It's lovely. Yeah.
All right. So I don't mean to hijack. Okay. So
No, you didn't hijack. You really added value. That was beautiful. So the first 3, the week 2, week 3, really you're clearing the inner obstacles to love. This identity shift, going from a false love identity to standing in what I'm calling your true love identity.
True love identity. Okay.
And being able to source relationship from the part of you that has resources and depth and the part of you that already knows you're worthy. All of us have that part of us. Sometimes some of us have to look more for it if we've been really overly identified with a younger, traumatized self. We want to, Dick Schwartz calls it blended. I call it collapsed into being overly identified. But all of us on some level know this. I had a friend back when I was in my 20s. I was living in New York and I was studying acting, and I was a cabaret singer actually. And yeah, so I also waited tables, and I had a bunch of friends. We all, we'd hang out afterwards and have a lot of fun drinks together and stuff. So I was talking to my friends one night after I'd had a very difficult audition that morning. And I was really disappointed and really discouraged and really feeling sorry for myself. And I'm just going on and on about I'm never going to amount to anything. This whole thing is a pipe dream. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I just dimmed down my expectations. I'll never be more than a waitress. And which, by the way, if you're a waitress, please forgive me because I actually love, but that was just me in my pity potty. So, and my friend Bill looked across the table with deep compassion and he said, "I'm so glad you're facing it now, Katherine."
That's what wow. little wake up slap.
I said, "Oh," and I got mad at him. And I said, "Well, how dare you say that to me?" He said, "Thank you." Okay. I'm just saying, like, all of us know there is a part of all of us that knows that just the trauma, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The truth. So in the work that I'm doing, I really distinguish what's true versus what's trauma. And we've got to start to identify with what is true.
Well, can I just also just give a shout out to Bill and for all of you, me, everybody watching and listening, be a Bill to your friends. Call your friends out with a full heart in a way that, I mean, it takes, God, I was going to say balls, but balls, guts, whatever, to, when somebody is telling that story, and to your point, that self-pity and I mean, listen, it's tough to be an actor. I mean, it's tough. Particular paths are tougher than other paths. And I give a lot of credit to the friends and people in my life who will lovingly call me out. It's like, oh, you do care, because it takes guts. And I want to be that kind of friend.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we're all very enrolling. Where we're in our fall centers, we definitely can be very enrolling to everybody in that story.
100%. And the common, I mean, it's the common kind, to get, like, we're all being trained to be more empathetic. So, oh my God, Katherine, oh, poor you, and there's a certain logic to that. And yet that then becomes the reinforcing cycle as well. And then you're like,
oh. About sponsoring each other in the beauty of who we each are. And it's gold. We could do a whole conversation on that because that's just golden. Because a lot of us, the agony is that we weren't quite sponsored properly when we were young.
Sponsored. I never heard that phrase, sponsored in the agony. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, very painful. Yeah. So to sponsor each other's greatness and potential. So you could say to your friend, "I'm so sorry that you're suffering and I really hear you. And I want you to know that how I see you is like, I already see you as happily married. Or I already see you as."
Oh, I love that.
And I'm holding that vision with you and for you.
I love that because, again, when I think about, everybody says, like, if they're experiencing some degree of grief, right? And that you could argue that what you're experiencing was grief. You're feeling a sense of loss, a sense of fear and so forth. It's like, hold space for that. Yeah. Right. And somebody like me will often be like, let me show you the silver lining. It's like, oh, Andrea, you're so annoying. But I love how you just power move of, hey, I'm really sorry. You give the empathy.
Yeah.
And then what I see is, like, that's an awesome combination. I love that. I'm totally stealing that from you, Katherine.
Great. Wonderful. So when I was doing the transformation, when I was doing my own, pre-calling in the one process that became calling in the one, I definitely had, several things that I was looking at, and I'm not valuable was a big one. But the I'm alone story was very embedded inside of me. No one's really there for me, and people leave. That was really crystallized. So,
and that was just, may I just ask just a little bit more? So was that growing up, little Katherine?
Yeah.
What were do you feel like talking about the circumstances of your life?
Just on the broad scope, my parents were very young when they married. They married in the 50s because they got pregnant. So that was what that. And they
hang on, they got married in the 50s, meaning, but like really young, like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, my mom was I think 17 or 18, and my father maybe 20. So they had a very difficult marriage. My father left when I was about 2, maybe a year and a half. My mother and I were in and out of different places that we lived. Then I ended up getting parental alienation with my father, who I'm very close to him today. We are 2 peas in a pod. We're very much alike, but I was separated from him. My mother had to go to work, and she was in college first, and then she went to work, so I was alone. I didn't really have childcare when I was maybe, I don't know, 7 or something. I would just come home to an empty apartment. I think it was 8. Come home to an empty home and wait for her to come home after work day. So
Can you imagine anybody doing that now? I mean, by the way, that sounds very familiar to me too. I think I was babysitting the neighbor's kids when I was 8. What's wrong with you with people? But can you imagine now leaving your 7 or 8-year-old home alone?
Yeah.
Like, who would do that?
Well,
I mean,
whole explosion of that's what we call latchkey kids,
well, right.
Whole explosion of that, particularly after divorce became more common in the 60s, because I think Ronald Reagan made it more accessible for people, and there was an explosion because he introduced no fault divorce. So anyway, so there's so we all have our stories, and the self that formed for me in response to that is I'm really alone here.
And you really were.
Yeah, and I was. You're right.
Okay.
That was true at that
Well,
time.
and hang on, let me just ask you this. Like I can sense little Katherine, going home after school, you're 7 or 8, you're giving yourself a snack, you're sitting around probably watching TV or whatever. That's physically alone. How tuned in was your mom emotionally?
Oh, she was very absent.
Oh, see, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the double whammy.
That was for neglect too,
Yeah.
And then it was TV dinner in front of the TV.
I can meet you right there. I always like the turkey one. Turkey and gravy. But oh God, yeah, no, painful. I mean, of course.
And outpictured when I was an adult, and then so this is the other piece. My dad married a woman, and back then in the 60s, people didn't really understand what we understand now. So somehow it made sense to everybody. His wife did not want me to be part of their family because she didn't like that he'd been married before and had a child. It was his wife over me, and he chose fidelity to her. He agreed to that. And anyway, so
oh my God.
So how that translates in my little psyche, my little sweet psyche, is that, of course, this feeds, a further explanation into the pattern of married men being quite a temptation for me, because I did get involved with several of them over the years. And
interesting.
He's finally going to leave her for me. I'm finally going to get him, which of course never worked. So it was quite dramatic. So here I am doing Calling in the One, and I'm looking at this crystallized identity if I'm alone. And I have a lot of history, a lot of evidence for that story. That's why it's hard to give up.
Yeah.
But when you're looking to understand yourself as the source of this story, it's things that were just off our radar. So for me, it was like, oh, I have no expectation on my criteria for somebody that I would actually give my phone number to, let alone let into my life and my bed, is that there's chemistry, there's, similar interests, where there's an attraction. It's not even on my radar to look for, is somebody actually available to love me? Will this person be there for me when I now? So that is one of the core things that we want to be looking at. Has to do with, can this person really show up for me? What's their character? What's their capacity?
But how do you know that early on, especially when there's a lot of chemistry, right? Because it's like, oh, like you're totally, it's like, I feel like
you kind of know that they're not going to be if they're married.
Oh, well, right. Good point. Okay, if they're married, right.
I'll get to your question in a second. But if somebody is actually, married, it's pretty sure that they will.
Yeah, then that's a very, very low chance.
And looking to how the identity shift. The identity shift in that situation is that I did not come here to be alone. I was born to love and be loved. It's power to choose relationships where, the capacity to be there for each other is rock solid. Like, that's the deeper truth. I have the ability to create that. You talked about the word agency, calling in the one, giving agency. I have to learn how to do that. So that's what I realized. And then how I was the source of the old story is it wasn't even on my radar to look to see if someone was available for that level of commitment. So I'll just tell everybody right now, when you're dating somebody, you're looking for, and it might take you a few dates to find this out. So do not overly invest until you see the answer to these three things. Does this person have good character? And what good character means is, are they a trustworthy person? Do they do basically what they say they're going to do? Not everybody does it perfectly, but are they that accountable for what they said? Do they show up consistently? How do they treat other people? How are they treating you? Does this person have good character? Are they in good standing with their creditors? Are they okay? So how are they showing up with the people that are serving you? Are they nice to the waiters?
Yeah.
Okay. So character, capacity. Does this person have the capacity to love? If somebody's drinking every night, they might not. Does this person have the capacity to be a good co-parent with me? And we build a family together. And then, of course, commitment level. Is this person available and free? Where are they in their life? Are they available to actually be in a relationship? So, you can get disappointed because you discover that there is chemistry, but those three things are not happening.
So character, capacity, and commitment. And I would just contend that it may take a little while to figure out all of those three things. But I feel like back to the point of the very beginning, and as it's woven through the show, it's the intention. Like being really clear on your intention to say, these are the non-negotiables.
And fidelity to the future you're committed to creating. So a lot of times you have to say no to things that are hard to say no to. Integrity part that you
yeah.
That's the integrity. You have integrity to the future. So there's a lot of transitions that you're going through to kind of clear out how it's been for you in order to kind of recalibrate yourself for the future committed. I'll just say step 4 is about the manifestation practices.
Let's talk about that.
We actually went to step 4 when we did the visioning, and I asked those questions. It's the basic of step 4. Step 5 is about how to take care of yourself and how to love yourself, because your relationship with others cannot be better than your relationship with yourself. And so we're recalibrating that and really teaching people how to be in right relationship with themselves so that they're not kind of duplicating the self-talk of the worst of their mother or father or givers. Then step 6.
Well, hang on, let me just ask real quick with the taking care of yourself and self-love, which could be a whole show onto itself, right? And a lot of what we've been talking about gets to that. I mean, it's from what you're describing in terms of doing that work and being aware of that identity story that you're telling yourself. I mean, it feels like a lot of what you're talking about really feeds into step number 5. And you talked about self-care. Well, self-care and self-love are different. To the extent you're meditating every day as a form of self-care, or you're exercising, it feels like all those then end up contributing to saying, I am worthy. And that's something I've done a lot more. I am so much better about giving me time. And as a working mom, it's like, oh no, I don't have time for me time. No, I'm like, I have to have me time, right? That to me is self-care that then feeds the self-love.
So self-love, as I define it, has to do with the way that we're in relationship with ourselves when we make a mistake or when we kind of screw something up. How do we treat ourselves? How do we speak to ourselves? Do we speak to ourselves with kindness and encouragement and compassion, or are we harsh in the way that we were, spoken to when we were young? And it's learning how to be in, right relationship with yourself that will actually allow you to show up with another person like that. And will also, if you have a pattern of pulling in people who are very critical or not very nice to you and not even noticing that until you're in too deep, you will see them right away. You will notice it won't be a match anymore for you. If you're having those people coming in, it's because that's how you are in relationship with yourself. So you feel like home.
Yeah. And I love just, it's such a easy, just step number 5, how do we speak to ourselves? Everybody listening and watching, I'm looking at you. And me too. This idea of really being so intentional about that. And I love how you said, Katherine, how what studies show and what you're advocating is how we talk to ourselves in the third person. Hey, Andrea, that's okay. You made a mistake. That's okay. You got it. Mistake. What did you learn from it? Like, I think of how I even talk to my own children. It's like, oh, could I be, and sometimes I talk to my own children like I'm talking to myself, not nice. I try not to do that. Well, but I love that idea of like, just, hey, Andrea, like, you got this, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole practice that I do called the self-love power practice, which is really to help regulate us so that we can get back into the stronger parts of ourselves and into the true you center. And that is, that's just the simple practice. And when I find myself triggered or dysregulated, to be able to say, Catherine, sweetheart, what are you feeling? Isolate one feeling. I'm feeling disappointed. And then to mirror it back, I can see that you're disappointed, sweetheart. What else are you feeling? And just stay with yourself until you've just named and witnessed and sent love to yourself. And then you're going to be more regulated to be able to then show up from a more resourced sense of self.
I love that so much. It reminds me exactly of Harville and Helen's imago process, right? That dialogue where, but what you're saying is, you're in dialogue with yourself is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What did you call that? The self-love
power practice.
Self-love power practice. Okay, you guys, you heard it here first. Self-love power practice.
Put you back in your power because you don't want to be navigating relationship from your triggered younger self.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so on to step number 6.
So step number 6 is really about now take all of these tools that you're learning and start to practice them with people. Start to really show up from the truth of who you are and really begin to engage more deeply, ask for questions, listen more deeply, speak up for yourself, all these things that we really need to learn, the skill building of good relationships. And then step 7, the core consciousness of step 7 is being resilient in the face of disappointment. Okay, because dating is not for the faint of heart, and neither is being in a relationship. I've had a lot of people write me and say, okay, I called in the one, now what do I do? Help.
It's like the dog that catches the car. Oh crap, I got
it. So I think, and the truth about our attachment habits, let's call them habits. You call them styles, but I think they're habits.
No, I like that. I actually love that. Attachment. Okay. Attachment habits, because they are not hardwired. I mean, they might feel hardwired, but I love that. Oh, I love that.
Attachment style is not a tattoo.
No.
It's not a tattoo.
Oh my God. Somebody tweet that. Attachment style is not a tattoo. Katherine Woodward Thomas. No, but I love that because it's like, so attachment habits, and just circling back to your point about the resilience. I mean, it reminds me of going back, an hour ago in our conversation, Sue Johnson, and how relationships grow us. And I feel like that's...
They diminish us or they grow us.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Fair.
It happens when we're disappointed. That's the fork in the road. So if you go into, see, I'll never be good enough for anyone, or see, no one will ever love me, or see, I'm really not wanted, you take whatever the challenge is in the relationship and you make old meaning from the false love identity, you will start to collapse into that and be a lesser you in that relationship.
So that starts with the disappointment. That's what you're saying.
It starts with disappointment. When we get disappointed, somebody criticizes us, somebody doesn't give us what we need, somebody puts us down, somebody, whatever, they're just not responding to us properly. That's what I'm going to call a disappointment. These are, mismatches, miscommunication, seeing something about somebody that kind of is shocking because you thought they were one way and now you're seeing they're another way. All of these things that kind of rock our world in relationship. If you go into false meaning about that, it will begin to dim down the relationship and kind of crystallize your reword. That becomes a reword.
Well, it's back to the self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
So to break the attachment habit. Well, if our attachment style is always revealed in a disappointment.
Oh, right. Oh, I love that. Okay. Attachment habit, not style. Attachment habit is revealed in a disappointment. Say more.
Well, if you notice, somebody disappointed you and you're like, I'm out of here. I'm done with it. That's kind of a love avoidant, because the core identity underneath that is I'm not safe in love. Love is dangerous for me. So no one's safe. That doesn't mean I don't want love. So I'm going to just show up and then back off and show up and back, condition love. I'll sabotage and destabilize it. So but in the insecure love, the anxious attachment is the core of it is I'm alone, and I'm not. I'm alone. People are going to leave me, so I'll do anything to keep them from not. So you have to deal with it at the level of identity. We're going right down to the root when we do.
Yeah, back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning. But how we then deal with disappointment, if you can notice what's happening, you get triggered into an old center, you're able to wake yourself up. The truth is that I'm the source of safety and love, and I can create safety for myself in this very difficult situation. I don't know how in this moment, but I can, and I'm going to figure it out, right? That's your adult self on board now. And you are looking at the disappointment as an opportunity to grow. That's where the growth is. That's
beautiful.
So from that place, you have a growth mindset. You could say, I think we need to grow beyond this. And it looks like we use, some more skills and we happen to have in this moment. But tell me how you see that going and how I see. Now we're in a growth conversation.
Yeah. And what comes to mind there is, rather than being emotionally reactive and that petulant 3-year-old or 4-year-old or whatever age you were, where, that rupture really took root, having that nanosecond to kind of harness your intellectual horsepower, and to your point, like be able to say, oh, like maybe internally like, oh, that hurt. But rather than freaking out and bailing or flight, fight, freeze, fawn, all those, the different emotional triggers, to your point, it feels like what you're saying is that you're able to just take that breath and go, okay, what can we do about it? And lean into the conflict a little bit.
The truth of who you are,
Yeah.
So
that's a practice, right? Because if you're not good at it and it scares the hell out of you, I mean, I say this to my kids about all sorts of things. It's like, just practice it. Like what, and we talk a lot. My kids are 12 and 15. I mean, as you can imagine, it's like, oh my God, navigating 6th grade, navigating high school. It's like a lot of what we're talking about to me are things that I talk to my kids about. I mean, they had a conflict with a teacher. Okay. Like, what are you going to advocate? And one of my kids is like, oh, I could never have that conversation. I'm like, well, come on. Right. And it's I get so enthusiastic about it, because whether you're practicing piano or any, a new language, it really becomes a practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Okay. So hang on. So you gave us the 7 steps. That's amazing. So this all was what you crafted to get engaged. You were 41. You said, this is the...
Okay, back to
we need the story, Katherine.
We need the story. Okay, that was just the cliffhanger through all of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this inner work, and several weeks in my meditation, I think of this man who I had dated 6 years earlier, who I had thought of as the one that got away because I was not ready. And I hadn't talked to him in all that time, and I had this impulse to contact him. Now, all through that time period, whenever I had an impulse, I just did it, right? I said, you can't hesitate, don't overthink it. You just got to do it. I did not do this one. This one I didn't do. I was like, oh, he's married with kids, but now he's a great guy, and I'm just not going to call him.
I was literally wondering, I'm like, I wonder if this guy's married. I'm like, nah, he can't be married. He's married.
Well,
shit.
So I didn't contact him, but I did go to church a few days later. And I went to a church that had 10,000 people that would go, and very, very community. And then in between services, a lot of people were milling about in the parking lot. And lo and behold, there he is across the parking lot. And I have a shy attack, and I do not go say hello. And by the time I gather my courage, he already left. And so nothing I can do about that. I still didn't reach out to try and find him. And I'm speaking to a friend of mine who was one of my vision keepers, holding the future for me while I was doing this, living into my future. I'm going to be engaged by my 42nd birthday. And she says to me, Katherine, you must get online. Now, this is way before the online dating. It was just starting. Okay, this is like 25 years ago. You have to. So I got online. There's 250,000 people. None of them had their pictures up. All little like love handles, like, you know, hearts beating is one kind of love handle. I ended up responding to one person completely anonymously, and it was him.
Get out.
Yes.
Get out. Get out. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Dang, girl. No wonder you're so successful. You got the mojo. You got the antenna.
When I wrote this book, I thought that cannot just be a personal miracle. That is too crazy.
That's a crazy. I mean, but there are no coincidences, right?
Here, and then I gave birth to our daughter when I was 40.
But hang on. Wait. Was he still married when
he was never married.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying that he was married. That's I'm like, oh, frick. Okay.
No. He was never married. I mean, he had been married many years.
But right. But when you reconnected
him, see, but this is me as the source, right? So I was love avoidant. And so it looks like I'm going after all these guys and I want them and they're married and I can't have them. But as soon as an available guy did come in, I was not ready for him.
Oh my God, I can't. That sounds like me. I mean, I feel like that sounds like a lot of people. It's like, oh, they like me. There must be something wrong with them.
So we were married for One Conscious Uncoupling. It was done with Mark. We did a beautiful conscious uncoupling. And then a few years later, I called in my next one. So we were joking, we should write a new book called Calling in the Next One. But I have a wonderful, wonderful relationship with a man who I called in also a very magical way. So
can you tell that? I mean, I know we've been talking for a while, but do you mind just taking a couple minutes to tell that story? I mean, everybody's going to want to hear it.
You know, I don't know that I have time because I have another call.
Okay. Next time you're on Getting Open.
In the book, I do talk about it in the book. There you go.
Okay, so since we're gonna wrap up here, I want to reference you have something amazing coming up, Katherine. It's a free 90-minute seminar. I think you have it running on June online, right? June 24th and 26th. You told me it's called Loving from the True You. It is free. You get 90 minutes of this kind of amazing, I mean, not just great advice, people. It works.
Yeah. Well,
Katherine is
through the process of how to really distinguish between the traumatized self from the true self, or the triggered self from the true self, and be able to navigate love from the highest and the best of who they are, and really hold their center when they do get disappointed, so that they can really find their way to their own, wonderful, happy ever after story.
And then I saw something on your website. Tell me if this is something different. There was a step-by-step. Okay, now that's your book. I thought there was another workshop. Do you have another workshop?
Well, I have a free workshop that's always up on the Calling in the One, although we might replace the banner for just temporarily while we're doing this one.
Oh, yeah. The Liberated to Love and Be Loved. That's a free workshop. If you go to callingintheone.com, that's available. Like if somebody goes there right now, they can just grab it.
Yes. No, what I'm saying is we might change the banner on the website to the Loving from the True You, because when we're doing things live, I love to be with people. This is an opportunity for people to send in their questions, and I get to read their questions in. So it's pretty immediate to people.
Oh my gosh, Katherine, you are amazing. I've loved this conversation. I've taken so much away. I hope everybody watching and listening has too. I want to get you back on Getting Open, because I feel like we could go a lot deeper on a lot of different topics.
Thank you so much. I do have a new book coming out in a few months, and when I do, I'll let you know, because I'd love to come back and talk about it. It is called What's True About You: 7 Steps to Move Beyond Your Painful Past and Manifest Your Brightest Future.
Oh, we need it.
Yeah.
We need it. And that's coming out in January of 2026.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll look forward to having you back. And in the meantime, calling in the one, if you are looking for your soulmate, and if you're in a difficult place in a relationship and you need to exit, so you can call in the one. Conscious Uncoupling, 5 steps to living happily even after. Katherine, you have been awesome. Thanks so much for being on Getting Open. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I love her so much. I hope you guys do too. I hope you enjoyed watching or listening to the show as much as I did hosting it. Wow. I look forward to having Katherine back. In the meantime, there were so many takeaways. I hope you at least do one of the things that she and I talked about, at least one of the things. I mean, I know I say this a lot, but on this show, it's, yes, I want to entertain you and inspire you, but I want you to take action in your life, because it's through taking action and making change. That's how you transform and grow, and not just for yourself, but for the people that you love and care about and are, able to influence. So absolutely, at least one thing, commit to it, make that change, start that transformation. And as always, I would love to hear from you. What do you love about the show? Who are guests that you would like to see on? What don't you like about the show? You're welcome to email me at gettingopen@yourtango.com. And finally, if you're not following the show or subscribing, please do. My team and I are bringing it to you with our whole hearts, and we don't want you to miss an episode. That's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.